and welcome to another episode of the Convoluted Podcast. It's your host, Jesus, aka Tyrant Dominus, and I want to thank everyone for listening. Today we have another member of No Inner Monologue. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Dwen Noronha Dwen Noronha on the line. Dwen Noronha calling, that's new. One of the four hosts of No Inner Monologue. I guess this is my second time on the show, so thank you for having me.
No.
My first time alone. I'm not with the rest of the pack for once. So
Yeah, it's your second time going around with me. The last time you were with us, it was you, Joey, and Manny, and that somehow turned into an episode of your guys' podcast. And I actually
I know
it was it was enjoyable because I truly your podcast with everyone is honestly one of the few things that I enjoy listening to when I'm working at night.
Well, thank you.
And like honestly, everyone, I would highly go recommend checking them out. It's fun. But since none of the other guys and gals are here, let's talk about you. And
Okay.
tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Dwen?
Oh, jeez. First of all, I think I'm gonna have to apologize right off the bat because I've got a little bit of bronchitis.
Ooh.
So if you hear me coughing, it's not that weed's legal in Canada yet. Recording this is the day before, so it's just I've got a really bad bad cough. But who am I? That's actually kind of an interesting question. Interesting in the sense that I've never really thought about it, but I really should think about it more often. Just an Indian Canadian dude. Lives in Ontario, Canada, and guy who really likes to actually thinks he's creative and likes to play, really into soccer and pop culture. I'm a big pop culture guy, and just a guy who likes to talk to people for the most part. I think I like learning about people. So podcasts is what always gets me going. I'm like you. Whenever I'm working out or I'm doing some sort of menial activity, a podcast is like the perfect thing for me to listen to.
Yes.
Yeah, and if I'm not listening to like a comedy podcast or something, I'm probably listening to like a podcast.
Okay.
I'm huge into wrestling, so other than that, I guess man, that's kind of a tough question to ask somebody to ask them about themselves.
It's an odd one because me personally, I kind of have these moments in a year, like twice a year. I kind of, those moments when you're just sitting up at night and you're like you just can't, like your mind's just thinking, like, and you can't just go to bed because your mind's going and going. Yeah. And so at least twice a year, I kind of sit back and kind of look back and what, like, kind of, this might sound kind of douchey, but it's kind of just thinking like back of what I have done to get to this point in my life. Like, has it all been worth it? So a lot of people don't really think too much about it, but it's good to kind of just reevaluate yourself and see what you have done, even within the last six months or even year, to like what have you done. A lot of people do that, for their New Year resolution, since the year is almost over, and surprisingly.
Yeah, I think it's I don't think it's douchey. I think it's good to like take like you said, like take a good look at where you are and how you got there, and if you do it I think if you do it in sort of like an honest way, then it's good to it's good for self-improvement, right?
Yeah.
So if you are at a point in your life where you're happy and you're like, all right, am I happy because of the things I did, and am I happy with where I am at life, or do I want to get better? Then you can sort of like take stock of what's going on. And if you're unhappy, you may have to look at maybe want to do those long, hard looks in the mirror and go, is it because of me or is it my circumstances? And unfortunately, I think usually when you're unhappy, it's some circumstances, but it's sometimes you as well. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, and
Unless there's issues, you know what I mean?
no, there's always something in the mix in the life of and everything around you that does equate to that. So you're right, but it is you're totally right. It's something you got to kind of really think about, like not only for your well-being overall. You want the best for yourself, even in the hardest of times. But you want to put yourself in the best situation you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, like I've been listening to you guys for. You guys are almost over about a year, aren't you guys, into your show?
We're gonna be a year February, so I think today's episode that dropped, today being a Tuesday, was 38. I mistakenly said 39 in the episode, but it's 38. So yeah, huh?
No, yeah, no. I get wrong numbers. I stopped trying to count. I stopped trying to count.
I think. Sorry about that. I think we started just after you did. So you must be hitting a year as well now, right?
Yes. Actually, we hit over a year now. We had some.
Oh, nice.
We had a little bit of a gap, trying to restructure the show a little bit. But now it's now what it is. It's kind of this interview style thing, and I've been enjoying it. I've been having fun talking with random people, and I'm glad that I was fortunate enough to start with you guys, since you guys are a little bit more. Your interests kind of align with what I do, because a lot of the things you guys talk about is things that I grew up with, like all the '90s shows, WWE. All those classic movies, like everything you guys talk about, it's like, honestly, it's everything that I grew up with, surprisingly. So maybe that's why I'm more in tune with your show a little bit, because I can kind of relate a little bit more. Because what's interesting about your group, and I think I've talked about it with Tash a little bit more than with Manny, was your diversity in your group, and I just like that you guys are so like similar but different. And I know that's kind of an odd way to say it, but everyone kind of has their part in the show and a voice, and you're one of the few voices that kind of like I enjoy listening to. Because you kind of take direction, or you move the show in a little bit more direction than the other guys, because you can kind of feel where everyone is. What's it like? Everyone has like their role, like But you're kind of the lead, I would say.
Well, the whole idea for the podcast originally started because Joe and myself were going to start a podcast similar to yours, where we were going to interview people. And the whole idea of it was we were going to bring people on every week, have a conversation with them, and it didn't matter what the conversation was about. The guests sort of had free reins on what they wanted to talk about. And we enjoyed the format of that show. We never got to release it because we wanted to have a certain amount in the bank before we came out.
Yeah.
But it was a hard sell to get people to come to a podcast and just talk about it. They really wanted to hear what other people, who else had started work, or who else had done the podcast and what we talk about. And so we had recorded, I think we recorded 5 episodes, but it took a while to get to that 5. And, one of the things I'm sort of really big on, so I have a background in television. I work in TV. So one of the things I've always been told about in television is that, content is important and consistency is important. Mm-hmm. And that, if you create something, you better have some sort of schedule or something on a regular basis, so that people know that you're around there and that people who are following you don't forget, because this as well. We live in a world there's something new, something awesome, and something new every day.
Yeah.
So it's super easy to get lost in the shuffle. Like even even shows that you may love. Like there's a lot of I watch a lot of I watch a lot of Netflix and that, and there's sometimes have you watched Big Mouth at all?
I'm about to watch season 2 right after this and do all my
There you go.
YouTube videos for him. So so look forward to that, guys.
So season 2 is great.
Ooh, okay.
Me and my wife binge watched it last weekend, which was our Thanksgiving, or the weekend before, sorry, which was our Thanksgiving, and it took me about like 15 minutes into the first episode to kind of remember everything that happened a year ago.
Okay.
Right? Like just to kind of piece things together. I find like that for me, whenever I watch Game of Thrones, like the first 2 episodes, I'm always like, okay, who's this? What happened? Where did these guys come from? All right, but there's just so much stuff in that year break that you see and you watch and you consume. That so if something takes like a year and a half to come out, if it's big enough and if it has the marketing and if it has the following, it's going to do amazing. But if you saw something amazing and then you didn't hear about it for like even 3 weeks, in that 3-week period, so many different things can come about, right?
No, yeah.
So I really wanted something that was consistent. And in the episodes that we had done for that other podcast, we did one with Manuel. We interviewed Manuel, and he had told us all about his like time when he went to the Philippines. And we interviewed Tash. And we both agreed that we had a good rapport with the two of them. And Manny, I always wanted on a podcast because I'm not sure how his brain works, but it works in a fascinating way.
He is a character.
Yeah, he is a character. So you either love him or you hate him, and sometimes that happens. In an episode, we love and hate him. So, but he does bring something. He does bring something different to it. And Tash, Tash was good. Tash is Tash brings. One, she brings a female point of view onto the podcast, which is always nice. She brings a Black African American point of view, which is great, or African Canadian point of view, which is great. And she brings and another point of view is just that she brings is something that, and she just brings her point of view, which is totally different from any of the 3 of us, and it's really different from the 3 of us because Joe, Manuel, and myself see each other fairly regularly. If it's soccer or we're just going out for like a couple of drinks or something, we don't see Tash as much. Tash and me were friends before the rest of the group. So we, for her to come in, it's a sort of a, she was adding more to this chemistry than we had, and it's good to have her sometimes on board too because Joe, Manuel, and myself can be so familiar with each other that it's always good to have somebody who's not around you all the time so that you can provide context, because I think sometimes we talk, once in a while I'll find that we'll talk about something that you, Jesus, as a listener probably doesn't. You're probably like, who the hell is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, the quote-unquote inside joke.
Yeah, believe me, half those inside jokes even I'm lost at sometimes.
No, what's funny is like everything you've been like saying, like that in itself is something not only you but like every person I look at on the podcasting subreddit has had questions on. 1, consistency. 2, ideas. You hit a lot of the marks, and since you have that field background from television, you had already understood some of the things that like me myself trying to figure out is 1, consistency. That's a big point. 2, oops, ow, sorry, anyone heard that?
Okay.
No, yeah, something fell on me, but anyways. Another one is content. Are you willing to listen to, for this, like you guys were trying to do what I'm doing, is this interview style. Is this entertaining? Like, is this something people want to listen to? Like, and then then for me, and this is something then I see you guys were struggling, is trying to find people to do, and honestly that has been my strongest issue, is finding people to talk to. I'm fortunate enough to have had some time coming up, like you guys. Like, I'm glad I've had the luck to not only talk to you previously, but for the most part, I talk to Manny on a fairly regular basis, or at least I play video games with him here and there.
I'm sorry to hear about that. It's a tough role that somebody has to take, I guess.
I've carried a cross on my back. I can do.
Yeah.
I can wear that crown of thorns a little bit longer. But but it's like you said, it's consistency. It's providing good content, or at least enjoyable content, I would like to say.
Yeah.
And then as far as yourself as a podcaster or podcasting group is just finding the people, and then that in itself is just persistency, trying to go out there and putting yourself out there. And like, that would have been interesting to hear you and Joe, because you and Joe, like, I remember Tash briefly mentioned that you guys had that, and maybe you guys will release those as some lost episodes, maybe.
I've been wanting to do them. It's a matter of finding them. We did record those episodes, like, I want to say 2016 is the first one that we recorded, and over the course of the 2 years we recorded a couple more. But the nice thing is, we knew those people who were on those podcasts. We still keep in touch with them, so we may bring them along onto No Inner Monologue.
Yeah, because you guys have done recently. You guys have recently been doing some guests too, because I remember you guys had Dave twice. I recently had a discussion with Dave, which should be released already from the time of the release of this one.
Nice.
So he was a fun guy.
No, Dave came on our podcast and then suddenly became the podcast guest of a lot of other podcast friends that we have.
Hey,
but Dave's
exposure, man. That's
man. And again, like, we definitely want to have you onto the podcast. I know Joe's been working on how to do it for our setup at the studio, so hopefully we can have you on as well soon. But I think, what ended up happening was, we had decided that at least for the first 10 episodes, we wanted to have our core 4 together. And, our first 10 episodes pretty much took us into the summer, and the summer, I don't know. I don't know what the summer's like in Oregon, but in Canada, you take full advantage of any kind of summer that you get. And the minute the summer came, we sort of all spoke to each other and said, you know what, it's going to be a mission to have all 4 of us together. And if we have to, like, I didn't do the 2 before today. I wasn't able to do those podcasts because of some work stuff that came about. Manny went on a trip somewhere, but I can't remember where, so he missed a couple of episodes. Tash will be missing a couple of episodes because she's going to Hawaii. Actually, I think she's in Hawaii right now. So, it was going to be a lot harder to get the 4 of us together. And I think if we had the opportunity for a 4th, we had Josh on, who talked all about, like, dance. That we actually found it was a fascinating episode for us, because we didn't know anything. We didn't know anything about the world of dance, and it was really interesting to learn about it. And then we've had, Brock's been on a few times, but Brock was always sort of part of the original producer bit. And we have a guest on in today's episode, who is teaching us about horticulture.
Okay.
So sometimes having that person who's sort of an expert is good to be there, because we can talk about certain subjects all we want, but we don't necessarily know. And I think, like, and I think this will work out for you as well, because the more you put out there, the more hopefully people who are listening and friends or other podcasters or people who are just experts at stuff who you may be able to come into contact with have sort of reference to listen to and go, well, I know what they're about, so I'm not going to go on there and make me look like an idiot. They're not going to, I'm not going to go on a podcast and be blindsided by some weird shit that they do. They're actually like a group of guys who are, pseudo funny and will allow me to actually be part of their thing, and then hopefully they promote it themselves.
No, yeah, that's that's the best way to put it. Is just having a chance to speak your expertise basically, and then join in the fun. That's always been what I've been trying to promote whenever I'm out there trying to convince people. Is I'm giving them the space to talk about what they enjoy, what they're interested in, and anything they can help me learn a little bit more, because I enjoy when people talk about their passions, their interests, and I learn a little bit more myself, and hopefully the audience itself themselves can learn from that too.
Yeah. So and question for me, from my end for you: what made you want to start the podcast? What's the origin story on your end?
A little origin story from my podcast, and this I can kind of also go from what the issues that you've been dealing as well with scheduling with everyone.
Yeah.
So originally, I've been listening to podcasts for almost little over 2 years now. It was not something that was on my radar until recently. So I was listening to. Some of the first few ones were some story-based podcasts from from the Adventure Zone, which is just basically a D&D podcast, which I enjoy D&D, but I can't play it for nothing. But I enjoyed listening to the storytelling. Okay. And then there was a YouTuber I was watching who recently started a podcast, and they were doing something similar with guests and stuff, and I was like interested in not only their podcast but their guests, so I started listening to them, and then that kind of just opened up more podcasts because all the ads on podcasts like, go check out this show, and after like the 15th time, like, okay, I'll see what this podcast is about, I started listening to more. I started listening to like No Sleep, the horror podcast. It was a good time because it's Halloween, I believe, at the time of this release. And it just, little by little, I just started picking up more podcasts, and I was like thinking to myself, like, that would be fun to do, because there was a lot of the shows I was listening to were some group podcasts. So the first thing this show used to be was kind of what you guys do, in a sense. It was me, a couple friends, and family talking about.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was that
was the first one we heard right before Manny came on.
Yes, we were.
4 of you.
Yes, it's just us talking about topics, basically similar to what you guys were doing. Just topics, kind of a jumble of mess, really. I'm not gonna lie, but then we kind of fell into what you guys were feeling, is scheduling, trying to get everyone together, and that's when we kind of took a moment back to kind of, like I said, reevaluate ourselves and try to fix it up again. And then we had like our season 2, and that's when you guys came in. All 3 of you guys came in for that. And then we had a couple episodes going into that, but then with that, it's a little bit more issues, behind the scene issues came up, and we took like about a month hiatus to kind of really think about who was still interested in doing it, who would be still able to find time to do it. And at the end of the day, I still wanted to do it, and I didn't want to keep like holding the show back from something I wanted to do. And at that point, around the end of season 2, I had a reasonable audience, and I want to thank everyone who's stuck with us at this point. That they were like listening, they were commenting, and I was really happy about that. So I didn't want to do that to them. So I kind of hit season 3 with kind of a solo act, and started just talking with people. And I haven't really looked back at that.
Well, it seems to be working for you, right?
Yeah, I've had I had the pleasure of talking to so many random people around the world. So I'm very fortunate on that, and I'm glad this community in itself is more than welcome to like self-promote themselves and are willing to go on other people's stuff to do so. And I'm more than happy to have anyone on my show to come and tell their stories, like, and just let them be themselves and go from there. And we'll play. We get a chance to play some games and stuff along that nature. But that's kind of what my show has now turned into, and I'm actually happy about it. So that's kind of
you're the game show podcast.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the entire story up till this point now. My show.
It always makes me laugh whenever I tell people that we have a podcast, because I always feel there's always like this tinge in the back of this sort of like cringe in the back of my head that's like, oh, you're such a millennial. Like, it's just like, oh, what do you do for fun? Oh, well, I have a podcast. And then I'm always just like, oh, you should give it a listen. And I will say the thing that I'm sorry, I don't exactly. How old are you, if you wouldn't mind me asking?
28, 27. Okay, so, whatever. Late 20s. I can't remember what day it is sometimes, but no, late 20s.
Late 20s. Okay, so I'm 35. I'll be 36 at the end of the year, and for me it's always just like, I always feel like that tiny cringe whenever I'm about to say like I have a podcast, and then at the same time I'm always kind of shocked at the amount of my friends who, when I'm like, hey, you should, have a listen to our podcast, and they're just like, how do I do that? And I'm like, well, you can, what kind of phone do you have? And then I'm like, oh, you can listen to it on Google Play or iTunes or whatnot, but Apple Podcast. And they're just like, so do I download that? And I'm like, no, man, it's on your phone. And then they're just like, how much is it? And I'm like, no, it's free. There's always like a little bit of a struggle to like, I'm like, just listen to one. Hopefully listen to one of the newer ones. And, I know a lot of the times, a lot of people who listen to our first couple of podcasts, we were sort of learning the ropes when it comes to like keeping the sound quality consistent. I think we've done better with that now, but it's a lot of like, it was a lot of growing pains at first, trying to get people to listen to it.
I feel you.
And I think yeah. So it's kind of nice. The numbers have grown up. The numbers are really high. Then they drop for a bit. Then they kind of, and so I'm kind of hoping that we just keep at it, and that people, because I think like not to toot our own horn, but I think we've sort of hit a nice chemistry amongst the four of us. I'm actually, you know what? I'm pretty sure you have listened to the episode that started off with Manny asking the question, what's the etiquette to send nudes to somebody over the phone?
I made a meme for you guys on that one.
Yeah,
which is
remember.
On Instagram. Honestly, I had to pause it because I kept laughing, and I was listening to it at work, and I was laughing so loud. My coworkers came around like, "What are you laughing at?" I laughed for like 5 minutes just because of that. It was like,
it's one of our weirder episodes. The whole thing was that, and if any of your listeners want to check it out, I'll find the episode number and let you know. But basically, we were supposed to do a back to school episode that day. We had all done like our research for back to school stuff. We had all put it all together, and right before, generally this is the case, right before we hit play on any episode, Manny shows up out of nowhere and asks a weird ass question. He'll either say or do something that's like super weird. So this was episode 31. It's called Live Nudes. And Manny Sorry about that. The episode right before we're about to hit play, Manny goes, "Hey, what is the etiquette about sending nudes to people?" And we're like, "What?" And he's just like, "You mean you sending? Who are you sending nudes to?" And he's like, "No, not sending. Like if somebody receives them, what's the etiquette?" And we're just like, "What in the hell?" And we hit record and just started talking about this, and we went a full hour trying to figure out what is going on in that little man's head. But um, but at the end of the episode, we sort of just sat down, all kind of looked at each other in silence, and just went. We went an hour on a topic of conversation that we did not plan for at all. And it's a weird one, but it definitely it's definitely the most it's one of the more interesting topics that we've talked about.
Oh God, no, just thinking about it because you guys kind of mentioned it in that episode that this wasn't supposed to be the main topic, and
not at all.
At some point, I honestly thought you guys were going to kind of divert a little bit back, and maybe it was just going to be like this little segment, but it just kept going, and and I honestly just wanted to keep listening to kind of see where this was going. And I honestly, anyone listening to this, go check it out. That will have you like with your mouth ajar. You'll be laughing. You'll be raising your eyebrows at some point. There's a lot in that episode, surprisingly, and for being such an improvised episode, because your guys' shows are a little bit more. In a way, somewhat scripted because you guys have your some things in check.
So generally, when we do an episode, we have a group chat. We've been trying to meet up a little more recently, depending on everyone's schedule. But the idea being that everyone gets in. We basically choose a topic that we're all comfortable. We all would like to know about, and sometimes that topic is more. Sometimes that topic is more geared to something that one of us is an expert in. Sometimes it's a topic that all of us know a little bit about, and sometimes it's a topic none of us know about, and we want to know more about. So I think like our episode that dealt with toys, I'm a big toy collector. Brock, our sometimes producer, is a huge toy collector. In fact, if you've seen any pictures of our studio, it's all pop toys. He has like an amazing collection.
Oh God, if you guys ever seen my collection, I'm sometimes extremely depressed at myself at how much money I spent on Pops figures. I can fill.
Hey man, you can fill. You go.
I can fill I want to say a 10 by 10 wall full of Pop figures.
Nice. You know what? The thing with those damn things are like I have a fairly decent collection, nowhere close to what other people have, but you know what the thing with them is that you see them, they're fucking adorable, and they hit some. If you have a fandom, there's a friggin' Pop made about it.
Exactly. Right.
Right, but like you walk past them sometimes, and you're like, oh, okay, well. Depending on what they are and where you're buying them, they can be $15, they can be $4. You know what I mean? It's not like you don't feel the sort of, if you're somebody who's gainfully employed, you don't really feel the sting of buying them, and they've been around for so long that they just sort of like collect, and you're like, okay, well. How did this happen? And me and my wife were so into them. We ended up making our cake toppers for our wedding cake were Pop toys of us.
Really? That's pretty adorable.
We ended up buying two that we sort of thought were similar looking to us, and then my wife's an art teacher and a very creative. We're both creative types, but I always say I'm the idea guy and she's the one who puts it together, which is great. With the idea guy always has big ideas, but then actually making it a reality, that's all her. So so she actually we bought pop toy. One for me was a character from Tomorrowland, and she painted the suit. She painted the suit, the suit and tie, exactly the one that I was going to wear for my wedding. And then she bought one that was sort of Belle from a version of Belle from the Beauty and the Beast movies, and then she colored the dress so that it looked pretty much like her wedding dress, and they looked great on the cake, like when they were up there. So we have them hanging on right now. But
Nice.
yeah, those things are so, like, they're so. I have not seen a single person who has seen pop toys and had like a aggressively negative a negative reaction to them. People look at them and they're like, even if they don't like them, they're like, oh, these are cute, which is why I'm always just like, God damn it, Funko, man, you guys hit on like such a huge. Have you seen that documentary on Netflix? There's a Funko. I don't know.
Oh no, I have not.
Yeah, it's I forget the name. I think it's called Funko is Fun or something like that. But it's great. It talks about their whole history, and all the avid collectors that are out there. Yeah, it's called Making Fun: The Story of Funko.
I'm gonna need to check that one out later this week.
Yeah.
Then.
But but like I said, like when we did the toys episode, like all of us have toys to some degree, but none of us really knew sort of the the backstory on all of them. I did a little bit about Funko. Joe did a bit of research about Lego and their sort of like resurgence in the industry, because they at one point were like bankrupt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and now like they're just everywhere. They're amazing. So. So those kind of things. We try and find a topic that interests all of us and something that we can find something interesting about them. I think in that episode, Tash did a whole story. Actually, two really interesting things came out of that. One, Tash did a whole story about Barbie and Ken's relationship.
Oh, I remember that lore, yeah.
Their will there and won't there, everything. And then Manny did a top 5 about these gay dolls that used to be sold in the market. What were they called?
Oh yeah,
Gay Bob, and they looked like Vice President Pence. Really. I'm not even joking. I actually had to go look up on our Instagram this thing, but they were these sort of rugged. They weren't for children. They were for the gay community at the time, and sort of tongue in cheek. But it was just one of those things. Like, none of us had ever heard about them. I don't even know how Manny found out.
He seems to always be on the internet for something.
He's never not on the internet.
But no, yeah, like I said, like a lot of your episodes, like that one included, like I said earlier in this episode, like your guys' interests sometimes align really well with me. So there was a lot you guys were talking about that hit me in my nostalgia factor. Not just with Pops, but a bunch of other toys that I used to play with as a child. And then while I was listening, like I said, like I own a lot of Pop figures. I own a lot of Hot Wheels, and God, honestly, if I could have like an entire room to myself, I would just have walls of just like you'll see a wall of Pops, an entire wall pinned with Hot Wheels, because I own about close to 800 Hot Wheels.
Holy.
Yes, and then I have nothing. Like, if I look around in my room right now, I have nothing but like plushies and a bunch of figures, some video games, and yeah. Someone out there is thinking like you're a total weeb. I don't care. Like, I love the stuff I have.
That total dweeb. That total dweeb tag has really changed in the last 10 years. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, that's another interesting. A lot of things that in the last, I want to say at least the last, 2018? I'm gonna say in the last 15 years, so much has changed in
Oh yeah.
in the community, and you can feel the shift. And a lot of people now don't understand it, because if you go back and look at some of like the old films and see how different, I would say, cliques interacted, it has changed surprisingly a lot, not only in the media, but in society. So the so-called dweebs aren't like dweebs. The word dweeb in itself is still an insult, but is slightly changed in a point.
Yeah, I used to have I had a boss who was great, and her kids went up to a cottage with their dad, and their dad, when he was younger, was really into D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And so she so God, so he he teaches his boys about D&D because they were kind of interested about it. And then when they got back home, she was like, "Oh no." She was just like, "Oh no, 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 no. We're not." She's like, "We're not doing this." And we were like, "Why don't you want them to learn about D&D?" And she's just like, "No." She goes, "I remember growing up, and she would have been a teenager in like the 80s,
Okay.
and she was just like, "No, I remember." She was just like, "I remember kids beating up the kids who were into D&D, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, but you know what? I legitimately don't think that there are nerds anymore." And she was just like, she's like, "I know, but I just feel, I just feel like that could be." She was just basically really worried because she didn't want her children to be. She didn't want her kids to be the kids that were like beaten up by, or being ostracized because of what they liked.
No, yeah,
And I was
that's
like, that's fair, right? And
no,
she's a
yeah,
mom, she's worried about her boys. But we were trying to convince her. We're like, and she's not somebody who doesn't know what's what. She was a fairly powerful person in the TV industry, and she knew about like all the comings and goings of what was like cool and what wasn't. But we were a friend of mine who we worked with and was really into what was happening, sort of in the world, sent her this article. And Dungeons and Dragons is like the game in Hollywood. Like they have Hollywood. There are Hollywood powers. There are Hollywood parties that have big, huge, heavy hitters in the industry that have Dungeons and Dragon games, game nights. And it's like this really fascinating, like the Judd Apatows of the world and stuff have these like D&D nights.
no, yeah, that's one of the that's actually the best way to. That's one of the best subjects. Like I would say, it has changed. D&D has always been that like thing that, like you said, it's that nerd culture that was. You would be ostracized, and you would have these small cliques be quote unquote play in the basements, and it's been the resurgence of it in mainstream within the last couple years has really just opened it up. Like I remember, I think it was in Stranger Things that kind of I would say slightly boosted it up, because that was one of the main focal points of that show.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, like for me, it was like I understood it, but I was not into it for kind of that same stigma, I would say. But
Yeah.
I get it now, because like I said, I started my podcasting listening to a D&D podcast, and I just enjoyed the storytelling and the randomness that could happen in there. And in the backgrounds of this show, I've been trying to get a D&D podcast started myself. That one is just finding the people to do it. Like I said, scheduling. But D&D is one of the best ways. I think one of the best ways that this show, the D&D, can be looked at is some of the old movies and TV shows. I don't know. Do you remember this old cartoon, Recess, by chance?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you remember that episode where TJ broke his arm and he ended up going to the basements with all the other kids, and he ended up just being with all those pale kids. The pale kids, that's what they were.
Yeah.
That's basically what happened, and then he kind of tried to bring them out into the playground, and they were just these nerdy kids, and that's kind of how they were portrayed back then. It was these nerdy people who never got out into the sun. And yeah, like you mentioned, it has been so mainstream now that they're mentioned in TV shows. There's multiple Twitch channels that you see live D&D playthroughs. There's so many actors out there like Henry Cavill, The Rock. Who else was there? What's his name? Oh shoot, why can't I remember his name from Fast and Furious? What is his name? Vin Diesel. He's big into D&D. Like, there's so many people out there that are into.
Yeah, the list that I'm looking at over here is like Vin Diesel, Dwayne Johnson, Drew Barrymore, Stephen Colbert, Mike Myers, Jon Favreau.
There's a lot.
Have you? Did you ever watch Community by chance?
Yes. Oh, I watched it with my brother. I wasn't heavily. My brother was like religiously into that show, but I watched it with him.
So Community had a D&D episode that they had done, and the guy who created that show, Dan Harmon.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if he still does it, but he used to have a podcast called Harmontown. And in Harmontown, they had a guy on there who I believe was like a big time. I might getting the words wrong, but he was a dungeon master, I guess. So he came on, and they used to Spencer Crittenden, I believe his name is.
Yes. Funny. Okay, so I don't want to cut you off, but he actually made that into a show called Harmon Quest.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to tell you.
Yeah. There's 2 seasons of this show out, and season 3 got renewed for next year.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. So that's where I was getting to it. So okay, so you know.
Oh, yeah. No, for anyone listening, it's like Dan Harmon himself is big into D&D, and there's a lot of his creativity comes from that as well, from what I understand. And he did make you can find a couple clips online. And I think the first 2 episodes of the first season of Harmon Quest are online. And if you look hard enough, anyone, you can actually find the entire season. If you look really hard, there are people who, thank God, upload them. But anyways, like that show is another thing that got me into just the idea of D&D. It's just storytelling and the randomness and the characters people can make. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know too much about Dungeons and Dragons, but I did watch. You know what? I don't even know if this is actually based on the game or not, but there used to be a cartoon in the 80s called Dungeons and Dragons. I want to say 90s. Called Dungeons and Dragons. As we're talking, I'm going to do some research on this because, popular game brought to life through animation. Holy shit, it started Willie Ames?
You learned something new.
I do learn something new. I used to watch this as a kid and had no idea that it was based on anything. And, wow, even more interesting, it ran for 2 years and was a co-production of TSR, the guys who made the game, and Marvel Productions.
There you guys go. A little knowledge for you guys out there.
Dungeons and Dragons. A Marvel show. Back when very few people claimed to know they were Marvel. Oh my God, this show came out in 1983. How did I watch this show? I was we used to get shows a lot later in Dubai, so I can see why.
Oh yeah, I forget. I sometimes forget that you moved up to Canada like a little later in your life.
I moved here when I was 14. Sorry. So I only ended up, I moved here when I was 14, so I've only actually lived here for like 1 year now.
Okay. So wait, around high school time?
Yeah, grade 10. So the summer between grade 9 and grade 10 was...
I
I didn't even get the joy of pretending to be like part of the, part of starting up a new school with everybody.
Interesting. That must have been weird moving, mostly because high school in itself is something new and different for people just moving from middle school to high school. That can be a big jump, and I think it just feels that way. But you moving from Dubai
Well,
to Canada, I don't know that. Can you
yeah,
elaborate on that?
sure. I think, there was a couple of things that were really interesting back when I moved. So when I was in, when I moved to Canada, not many people knew what Dubai or the UAE was, right? So it was sort of a, I think that was 97. So 97, it's sort of, the internet's around, but not everybody has it. Um, the city that we all live in is a very, Toronto's the most multicultural country in the world. Mississauga, that's sort of just a half hour outside of it, and where the airport is fairly multicultural as well. And there are a lot, there's a huge group of people who live here or who are from Dubai, but it's sort of not. At the time, I guess, like just people didn't know about it, and so when I got here, I remember a lot of people would be like, "Oh, you just came to Canada? Your English is so good." And I was like, "Oh, been speaking English my whole life, like we speaking." Because the thing is, Dubai is an interesting place in that, or it was a really interesting place in that there was a lot of immigration there. So Dubai was a desert. They had their people, they had their oil, but they didn't really have, but their population didn't match. If they had to just go with sort of what is called UAE nationals, the local people there, it'd be really hard to like build that city up because the population doesn't match sort of the size of the place is pretty small, but it still doesn't match. They needed to have immigration. They needed to have come down and sort of work and live there and sort of so that it could thrive. So a massive majority of people that live in Dubai are Indians, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, Filipinos. They all come in. They all migrate into the city, usually for work. If you can't live there unless now the rules may have changed since I left, but you can't live in Dubai unless your company sponsors you.
Interesting.
Sponsors your visa. So and then you have to make a certain amount of salary to sponsor your kid. Again, all these things may have changed, but as of when I was sort of and so all the people that we knew that lived there, everybody who lives there works. Everybody who all their the kids who are there are sponsored through their parents or whatever. But we all sort of in the back of our minds always knew that this was probably not like a permanent thing, because you would have kids whose parents, if their parents lost their job or whatever, then a company wouldn't be able to sponsor them. They'd have a certain amount of time to find a new job, but if they couldn't, then they'd move from. And I think like in the late 90s, my older brother had found a job and had started his career off, and my parents were sort of like deciding what sort of the next steps were for them. Had some friends who had moved to Canada. They had some friends who had moved to Canada about a year and a half before, and those friends really vouched for them to come down here. And so they made the move, and it was difficult. I mean, it was difficult. That was a place I'd lived my whole life. And we would travel to India. India's about an hour and a half from Dubai. So we'd travel to India every year to see my family and everything. So those were like my connections. And I knew it would be really hard once we came here. Like, one, I wasn't sure if I knew I'd maybe go back to Dubai because my brother still lived there. And I knew that it would be really hard to go back to India as regularly as we did, because now it went from being an hour and a half flight to like a 23-hour flight. So that would be a little bit, wouldn't be as regular. So there were definitely some connections that would have to be, broken, unfortunately. But it's kind of like when I got here, I knew it was sort of also a new start for me. So that helped. It helped with my mind, and it kind of helped that I was 14, so I was older and I could kind of understand what was going on. But it also stuck in my mind that my parents were much older so this move that they made was obviously it was for them, but it was clear in my mind that this move for.
Okay.
So, so that really sort of like became a big sticking point in my head that you don't fuck this up. And I was lucky to start up in a school. It's the same school that Joey and Manny both went to, and I was lucky to start up in a school that was kind of was a friendly school for the most part. Like everyone was fairly cool. Because I started in grade 10, everyone sort of thought I was already part of the school as it is, even though they seen me in grade 9. If that makes sense. And then and I spoke English, so like I could kind of. I mean, it's funny. I ended up meeting some friends a couple of years later who were Korean and had just come who had just moved to Canada, and they had a really interesting situation because their parents had come here. They had come on a student visa, so it was him and his brother. They were in grade 11 and 10, and they were basically staying in Canada by themselves. And their parents would send some money over and stuff. And it was a little bit harder for them because they didn't speak English. And they did end up, both of them end up speaking perfect English now. But they had a harder time still because we all have accents, but like they had a thicker accent because of speaking Korean for so long. And that made it a little bit difficult as well. But then eventually, again, like I said, my school was fairly friendly. They all made friends, and they did well enough that one of them ended up to Australia for dental school, and opening up a practice there and everything, and doing really well over there, and then being able to come back. And I think for me, yeah, and then for me, what made me kind of laugh afterwards was, I think sometime around 2000, yeah, I wouldn't say 2000. Dubai really blew up as a place that people knew. So when I first came to Canada and I tell people I came from Dubai, my kids in school used to be like, "You went to DeVry?" and then all of a sudden, like 2000, the UAE ends up becoming, like the Dubai ends up becoming this hot tourist destination. And then all of a sudden people are like, "Oh, you must be rich." And I'm like, "Bro, if I was rich, I'd still be there." I would not have moved back. So, so you know what? It was definitely a hard transition. I think the hardest part, I'm so happy that I moved here in the summer. That was a huge, because we came here and it was warm and there was, everyone was sort of off and people were like, over here, like people do, there's events going on every week and stuff. So you get to go out and kind of like experience the city a little bit.
Okay.
My wife had moved here in the fall and she was much younger when she moved, but she, always tells me like it was a hard time for her because at that time, she moved right when September sort of fake summer part. So, but like she moved here right when fall hit. So like she got here when it became daytime a lot later. It became the sun rose at like 7 or 8 or 7. The sun rose at 7. The sun went down at 6.
Yep.
So so it's hard. Like especially if you come from another country that's essentially like a tropical country and you make that move and it's cold and the sun's that really like affects the way you see a country. I have a friend who's trying to down, and I always tell him like, he's come down here in the summer for for the last 2-3 years and he loves it. And I'm like, you should probably make one trip here in the winter just to see whether, just to see the difference, just so you're not so surprised by it. But when you move here, make sure you move in the summer.
There you go. Some good advice.
Well, I think also when you move here, you don't have a job. You have a lot of free time on your hands, and you want to be able to use that free time. And it's just sort of like, I don't know. How is the winter in Oregon? Terrible.
Actually, I think it's similar to your guys. It's cold and wet.
Okay, so,
So no, yeah.
So that's the thing. So you're sort of, you sort of hibernate in the wintertime, right?
Yes.
Compared to what you would do in the summer.
Well,
so
yeah, it was a complete different transition from where I moved, which was Chicago, which is just cold. So there.
How long were you in Chicago?
Most of my life.
Really?
What's funny is like I said, like I was as I was listening to your guys' story, as listening to your story, I was thinking to myself of when I kind of was forced to move over here to Oregon. Yeah. And it was kind of similar to yours, and everyone who's listening to the podcast knows this tale a little bit. I moved out here during my junior year of high school, so 11th grade. And you were a little bit more mature in your decision, like how you wanted to like prepare yourself for the move. I was just kind of like that angsty teen, like, why do I have to go? Like, you're ruining my life a little bit. And I just kind of had to situate myself a little bit more because I kind of grew up in the like the ghetto part of Chicago, so it was a little bit more rougher around the edges, a little bit more dangerous. Okay. And then I moved out here. It's more like suburbia, like white picket fence stuff, like things you see on television. So it was a complete changeover. And the weather itself was a little bit more mild, I would say, than over there. So that was not too big of a difference. But
did you guys end up moving to work or something, or was it
neighborhood?
Neighborhood. Yeah.
The neighborhood.
Okay.
That it was getting every year we're just getting a little bit worse and worse, and things were just getting really bad. Honestly, I can say this, like our house in our neighborhood got shot up a lot. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there was like gunfire every once in a while. So, like it happens. Like a couple family members got jumped and assaulted, and that's not like really. Shit. Exactly, right? You as you know, your parents don't want you to be in that situation. And the year we moved was also the year we came out to Oregon to visit some family. And I think around that time, my parents were talking to our aunts and uncles about the location and everything, and behind it, like while we were vacationing. And we get back from our vacation, and my parents tell me like, "Oh, we're moving." Like, what? We just got back, and yeah. I don't get a chance to talk to any of my friends because that school is just about to start like 2 weeks beforehand. I don't get to talk to anyone and tell them like, hey, I'm moving. I don't even get to see you guys, so I leave on that. So
that's rough.
Yeah. So yeah, it was for me. It was a little bit. No, go for it.
No. I'm just saying. I have to say, one of the things which has been nice, and that I've been able, like, I guess because of the age I've been able to sort of experience, is the fact that, like, when I left Dubai, we left. My brother was still living there at the time, and I had some family that was gone, and I had friends there, and I had friends that, for the most part, like you said, at a certain point you're just like, well, this is it. This friendship or this relationship that you've had with these people is pretty much done because you're not going to be able to see them again. And then it's been kind of amazing to me that in the last 20 years, but for sure in the last 10, the world's become like such a smaller place. A lot of those friends that I had lost contact for a bit, I was lucky enough to go back to Dubai for my brother's wedding, and to visit one more time after when my nephew was born. And so I got to reconnect with a lot of these people. And then I was able to connect with them on Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and whatnot. And, all of a sudden we were chatting like it's like we're there in the next room, and even this point. even even this podcast right now, like you and me, we would not be able to have this conversation um, over a phone call, over a phone line, for as long as we're having, without without the internet, right? And
Yeah, exactly.
it's nice that that's been something that's happened that's allowed us to like close the gap a little more. Like even now, as we're chatting, like one of my friends from Dubai is messaging me, just asking me about stuff, and I'm just like, wow, these were like expensive phone calls at some point, where I had to have written a letter. You know what I mean?
Oh, I remember my parents trying to call Mexico multiple times and getting those strange calling cards. So.
Oh yeah, those still exist, by the way.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I know my mom's got a few of those just because most phone companies are like, yeah, listen, we'll drop the rates for pretty much any country in the world except India because you guys are everywhere. You all want to call us to talk.
Damn. Damn.
But yeah, but you know what, man? I'm just happy. Like it, I was able. Have you been able to like keep in touch with a lot of people from Chicago? Like now that sort of it's not as hard, or through like WhatsApp or whatever, or
Oh,
did you have to make a complete clean slate?
I'm gonna be honest. It's not like I did within the last kind of 5 years. I was reconnected, and a lot of I was picking up with a lot of people. It's this last year, I kind of pulled myself away. Like I'm off Facebook now. I'm no longer on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's just Facebook just became like, and this is just my opinion. Facebook just became this cesspool of a lot of things, mostly with the presidency and all this horrible stuff. And like school shootings. I honestly, I just wanted to get out of there. It was.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like
I'm still on Facebook, but I had to delete the app because it was
like it's hard. Like I still have Facebook on my I log in every once in a while, so I'm not like 100%, but I'm not on my computer as often. Like when it's on your phone, you'll click on it. It's one of those instincts now. That's a thing. And I kind of you're like I deleted the app. I'm not there that often. I only really have my Twitter and Instagram for sure, and that's usually just photos and people I follow. And I know people are going to say, you can just follow people on Facebook, but that just in itself is another monster.
You know what's tough about Facebook is that you're right. You can follow some people, and I had this thing with Facebook for the longest time where I was like, I'm just never gonna. I never unfollow people on Facebook because I'm like, maybe there's something interesting going on. And I like Facebook for when people send interesting articles or thought-provoking stuff. But unfortunately, sometimes you also get to see like some real terrible sides of people. Everyone's afforded their opinion. And I get that. But sometimes it's just, it's kind of just frustrating when you're like, you kind of see these things. Some things are like a little on. You're like, what? Why do you even care? Why do you even care about posting about this? It affects your life in no way. We had a big thing here for a while when, we had a bunch of Syrian refugees coming to Canada.
Oh I remember hearing about that over here.
And there was, and look, I understand that it affects some people in very negative ways. I know that there are a lot of policies and, there are a lot of things that people get really affected by. But it always makes me laugh when people are like, why are we helping these refugees when we have homeless people that we could work with and we could save? And we have veterans that we could save. And I'm like, the government, governments don't work as one issues at a time. It's just like, well, okay, listen, this is all we can work on right now. It's either refugees or veterans. We can't do both. Everybody, we can't multitask at all. It always makes me laugh when people get so. I'm like, you don't give a damn about veterans any other time of the year. It's just that now that you think that you just think that now that like a refugee's moving into the country that suddenly veterans need like some help. You don't volunteer, you don't help, you don't do any other thing any other time of the year. So it always makes me laugh when stuff like that happens, and I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to deal with this. I just came on this thing so that so I didn't have to concentrate on whatever I was doing at work for like the last 10 minutes.
No, that you kind of hit like one of the bigger points that I kind of steered off it, but it's just people just get into topics sometimes they don't know about. Sometimes they just want to put their 2 cents when sometimes they don't know what they're talking about, and I just don't want to read about it. I'm kind of done these days, at least. Like I don't. I mean, I have enough to deal with than hearing about like person A, B, and C, like literally in the comments yelling about each other about the same thing they agree on, but they don't understand that they agree on.
And I think that's the other problem. That's another big problem that I have is that I fucking hate comment sections. But my mind constantly lets me go there.
Hey, that's
like I will look.
That's me for Twitter. I'll go into the comments just for a laugh.
Yeah, I'll look at it and I'm like, I don't even know. Like this person doesn't even have a name. And I'm reading their stupid comments, and it's enraging me. And I'm like, I don't even know who this fucking moron is. Like, why do I care so much? I get into it all the time. I don't know if it's just so that I can get my blood boiling or what, but I always get into it. It's so frustrating.
I know. I try to get into it for a good laugh because I know, like, on topics that I'm kind of a little bit more familiar with, then I understand what's happening. So those are the ones I'll try to read. Sometimes I try to avoid on those topics that like are the main points, like say some celebrity gossip came up, and I'm not big into celebrity gossip, but if there's something that just pops up, like, okay, I'll learn a little bit about it. I'll just read a few of the comments and then kind of scroll down, and then I'm lost, and then I just go through the thread, and then I just hear people arguing, and I'm like, why are you arguing about these people you've never met or might care about?
That boggles my mind, man. Like what was it? Like the thing that gets me now is, so I will tell you straight up, like I'm a pop culture enthusiast, right? So I love like I love stuff about TV, I love stuff about movies, I love reading about behind the scenes stuff. I'm super interested in like this whole celebrity of culture and stuff, but I'm also sort of like weirded out by a lot of it. So like, have you read or heard anything about this like Pete Davidson, Ariana Grande thing?
About them breaking up?
Yeah.
Just because of Twitter. The Twitter's it was Twitter's number one thing.
So this is the thing, right? So these two hook up and then get engaged, and people are like flipping out that they hooked up, that they got engaged. Pete Davidson is a comedian, and he makes, I don't know, have you ever seen any of his stuff?
I did, because when they were talking about him, and he was kind of being referred as Ariana's boyfriend at that point. That was his spiel. So I looked into him a little bit more. So, but yeah, I see
this guy, a lot of his stuff is like very shock jockey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm not shocked. I wouldn't say shock jockey, but he does have like a shocking point of view of a lot of stuff. And Pete Davidson's dad was a firefighter at 9/11 on 9/11 and actually died in like trying to put out that fire. And he was, he's like 24 now. Would have been like super young when it happened. But he uses a lot of that stuff in his material. Like he makes a lot of fun in that material. He uses it to like as a coping mechanism. And people like, and since he's been dating Ariana Grande, like obviously that conversation comes up a lot. And he makes a lot of jokes about it. It's in his material, and people are like, oh, he's, why would she be with him? He's ugly, he's insensitive, he's this and that. I'm like, what do you fucking care, man? Like, maybe this girl who's had like a fucking shitty ass year where she was part of a terror attack, and then, had to broke up with a guy that she was into or whatever, like with Mac Miller, who had his own fucking issues.
That whole suicide, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, but prior to that too, like he was
No, no,
just he had his own, he had
he had
issues,
his,
right?
yeah, and then
And so
Twitter
maybe, you know,
attacked him.
maybe yeah, maybe this dude was just a good dude. Maybe he's just a funny dude, and she was into him. And why do you fucking care? And then people are all like, "Oh, this is never gonna work out." And now like the internet feels like they're vindicated and they're breaking up. Oh, why are you guys so mean to these guys?
Oh God, God, and what sucks is sometimes you know what's funny? It's funny, you know, the internet feels vindicated. You say it, but and it sucks. Is kind of internet culture can sometimes affect things like this. Like
Yeah,
sometimes it can avoid it. Some people can avoid it and stay strong to some of their values and stuff, but like many voices talk and it can hurt people and it can really put a strain on things. And you can see in the last couple of years a lot of people have like gotten away from Twitter, from any social media, just to kind of get away from things like this.
well, yeah,
And
man. Like, you know, I have an account that I do. Like, I have an Instagram account where I just do like drawings, right? Where I put up my drawings. And this month, I don't know if do you know what Inktober is?
yes, I've been seeing it on my feed.
Yeah. So basically, the month of uh, the month of October is called Inktober, and artists, or if you like to draw, they basically encourage you to just draw. There'll be you can either draw anything you want, or there's a prompt list, and you draw. You draw something that whatever the word of the day is. So last year I did like 31 days of TV. This year I'm doing the Inktober prompt, and a couple of days ago the prompt was whale, and I was trying to think about what to draw, and then I just remembered, and you'd have to be on Twitter very early on, but do you remember fail whale?
No.
Okay, so back when Twitter first started, they had a thing that when they were over capacity, an image used to show up of a whale being lifted by the little Twitter birds, and it was nicknamed fail whale. And it was just basically like, oh, Twitter's over capacity, really strike coming on in a few hours or whatever. So I decided to draw that, but I remembered when I was drawing that, I was like, holy shit, this was back when like Twitter was the fun, lighthearted, cool, you know, social media group. Like I remember following LeVar Burton. LeVar Burton would be like, hey man, I'm in a bar in Toronto. I don't really know anybody. Anybody want to come hang out?
Okay.
You know, or like Taylor Swift was on Twitter very early on, and she posted a thing. She used to do it the contests. Whenever she came to a new town, she would always do a contest like, hey, there's 2 tickets in this area. The first people to go there, I have a guy there handing out tickets to my concerts. You know, I mean, it used to be a lot more like positive. And then somewhere along the line, as the internet does, you know, it just sort of becomes this weird toxic place. It has become super toxic now that, you know, your leader in chief is up there.
Oh, oh God. Don't worry, our new future leader, Kanye West, will succeed.
Oh yes, he'll change everything. He'll change it all.
Oh God.
Jesus, I was watching something. I was just watching a clip of that before we came on, and I was like, oh my God. Like, you know, that's so frustrating, man. Because I like, it's so frustrating because when Kanye first came out, I hated him. I thought he was too like egotistical and stuff. And then
he
I know,
still.
and here's the thing. No, but here's the thing. There's egotistic. I mean, you can't be a rapper and not be egotistical, right?
No, yeah.
Like you can't. You just can't. You can't be I mean, people say that about athletes too. They're like, you got to be humble. You got to be this. You got to be that. I'm like, nah, man. You can't get to that level of success and not be somewhat, you know, in your mind at least be like, I'm the best, right? So I get it, but I remember, you know, somebody had given me the Graduation album, and I listened to it, and I was like, holy fuck, this guy's good. And I loved that album. And then like as the next few albums came out, it was great. And you know, I can always sort of like trace back the crazy to when his mom died. Like I always think about that. Like right when his mom died, like he just sort of like, it's sort of something sort of unleashed. And I hear, now I hear a lot of people who are just like, oh yeah, he's been Kardashian-fied or whatever. I'm like, nah, man, he was always like this beforehand. And like Chappelle said it right. I mean, if you're rich and if you're a rich American, Trump's the perfect president for you, right? He's like, yeah, I want to keep my money. So I can kind of see, why somebody like, Kanye would be down with Trump. It's just so frustrating to like. I don't know, he's just a. That's all I can like. It's just so. It's just the way the message is being broadcast is so odd.
Okay, so the only thing I'll say for this topic is, I think Trump has been is the first president to be one of those people who is a social media figure. He's like that kid who's on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram posting shit posts. Basically,
yeah,
that's what he is. He is that. Like beforehand, Obama did the same thing, but it was a little bit, like you said, a little bit more humble, a little bit more straightforward. Straightforward in a sense. But Trump in itself, he is straightforward and in your face. Like he doesn't hold back, like people do on the internet. He is that. He is the internet in itself.
Oh yeah, like, he's the first troll president.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. There, he is the first troll president, and he might not be the last. So
he might. You know what? He might not be, but hopefully, I mean, I can only assume that one thing I can only assume is that, like, in a sense, the dude is doing. He might be the guy that may help. He might be the guy that's sort of like, who may be bad for the short term, good for the long term, right? Because they're saying like this next midterm election, from everything I've read, it seems like there's a lot of people who are like going strong on wanting to make a change in the states, or basically going out. He's going to get a lot of voter turnout. Now, he may. I've always made the joke that he'll probably be a president for 8 years.
Oh.
Because here's the thing. I always just feel like, when he became president, the polls all said that he was not going to win, right? Because you're not going to. If somebody comes up to you and asks you like who you're going to vote for, you're not going to say Trump, because if you say Trump, then people are going to be on your, people are back about it. I mean, as progressive as the liberals are, they're also very like, what do you mean you're going to vote for that guy? Some people can be pretty hardcore in their thinking. So I always joke that he'd be president for 8 years, but hopefully whoever ends up running for the Democrats in the next election isn't like some psychopath.
No, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next election. I'm just hoping it doesn't turn into another quote unquote game show fiasco with a little Big Brother twist in there, because last time it was funny hearing people like there was, I wasn't paying attention to the election much. Like, it's not really something I wholeheartedly pay attention to. But when Trump was running, he turned it into such a show that people were just tuning in to watch it. And it started with your quote unquote political talks and stuff, but then he just turned it into people. It was like it was a sitcom. And then at the end, every other person was playing his game, and they were cursing each other out. And I forget the young kid who was running it. He was literally saying dick jokes to Trump. Like, really, this is how far you're falling. Dick jokes. Oh God. So I'm pretty interested in what's going to happen. Are they going to kind of turn back a little bit and kind of go back to a bit of more traditional um, election where everyone's kind of do their thing, or is it going to be a blend of what happened last time, but a little bit more? I'm going to say adult instead of this kind of MTV style fiasco. So
Yeah, I'm kind of interested. I'm interested in it as well because um I'm interested. I'm interested to see sort of like how it goes because the next election will be interesting because it seems like the Republican Party, at least some of their candidates, not the Trump candidate, not on the super federal level, but sort of the lower levels, they all seem to be really going through that like MTV Big Brother style thing. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Have you seen that election? There was a campaign ad that went out this month, I want to say, where this it was on Twitter for a while. Basically, this guy um he's running for election in some town, and it looks like he's probably going to win. Like, it looks pretty good that he's going to win. And then his opponent posted an election, posted a video, and there's all these people in the video, just different people, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't think he's all that great. He makes some decisions that, you know, haven't been things that we would approve, and blah blah blah." And they just stating their opinion, and then right at the end of the ad, I think there's 4 people in it, and they all introduce themselves as that candidate's brother and sister. They're his family.
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen it. It made
Yeah.
me laugh. It made me laugh so much.
Yeah.
When you're
It
on
was such a-
family.
They're like, yeah. And I was just like, oh my God, Thanksgiving is going to suck for this guy. Like,
Oh, it's funny that you mentioned. Yeah, I did see it just because it was I was on Reddit and someone posted it on
yeah.
it was like you gotta really hate your sibling at some point, or like you did something bad in the back in the day to kind of curse yourself from an election.
Yeah, like they all basically are like, we're supporting the other guy. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's a great, that's a great chess move.
Oh God,
You know,
yeah.
when you're talking elections. So it's
No,
I wonder, all I wonder with that is who was seeking whom. Like, did the family go to the
no,
to his
I'm pretty sure
opposition, or the opposition goes to them?
I think the opposition had something, and he
Yeah.
probably had some secondhand knowledge of maybe some family troubles, and
Yeah.
he used that. It doesn't hurt.
Well,
It hurt. It didn't hurt him. It didn't hurt him.
are there sort of elections going on right now in Oregon, or is it just like I'm not?
There is a couple policies being passed and a new mayor in my town.
Okay.
But I don't know. For me, I know for some smaller towns, the mayor's not really kind of a big thing. It's more the Chamber of Commerce that kind of run everything. The mayor's kind of like the figurehead of the city, kind of. So I've never really paid too much because right now, like I've always lived in smaller towns, and it doesn't really affect us too much. It's more the other people in that. So that's really it. Just a few policies that kind of affect us with our taxes and stuff, but that's kind of it, really.
Okay. We have a municipal election, so it's not a federal one. It's just like sort of it's not a federal one, and it's not a provincial or state election. It's literally elections for every city and riding kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's actually on Monday, and I have absolutely no idea what it's about. Like, I like usually with because it's kind of funny because we just had a federal election this year or we had a provincial election this year, like just before the summer or during the summer. So we just went through all of that, and now we're going through this one. I'm like, I kind of wish they'd just do all of it in one go, you know. So,
Yeah.
but then I guess we'd have campaign posters everywhere. We just do.
Hey, one go and it's over. Come on. It's like a Band-Aid.
Yeah. It's, it's just I have to do some research because I have no idea who for what the voting is for, what the actual, like, which makes me sound like a jackass, but
Hey, you're like better than most people these days if you're actually willing to fill it out. There's the people there's people who do the research, those people who just fill out the form, and then there's people who don't even do it. And there's probably something in there.
The thing is, it's funny, like, it's tough, right? Because it used to be like, hey, these guys are your team. It's trickled in over here in Canada as well, but like it used to be sort of like, oh, okay, well, the Democrats are your team, the Republicans are your team, and this is what they do, and and they follow your sort of like core values or whatever. But now it almost feels like you really have to do research into the person, because if that guy has an opinion that's so, far off. Like, there's a dude running for a municipal election who's making really bold claims about immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of us are just like, you don't make any decisions about immigration. You're a minister. You basically take it on a city level. You're like a city. You're a city. You're running. You're on a city. You're making decisions about the city, not about fucking like immigration's a federal thing. But
hey, he's thinking 2 steps ahead.
You know what though? The scary thing is he'll probably win based on those talks, because since Trump sort of became in charge or whatever, and it's happened on this end too. Like, people are very, very open all of a sudden about like, oh yeah, no, this place was a lot better when it was even when we didn't allow immigrants in. And I'm like, but you're an immigrant.
He did open a lot of doors and a lot of closets for a lot of people that you would never have thought about it. And like I said earlier, there's kind of also one of the reasons I kind of left Facebook is that's a place to talk. And
yeah, people are very open about that kind of stuff now, eh?
Yeah, and be it a good or bad thing, but I don't.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, that's the thing, right? You can, in a certain sense, it is a good thing, because I remember growing up, the thing used to be you don't talk about religion and you don't talk about politics.
Yes.
And that has changed 100-fold now. People are very open about talking about those things. And I guess the only thing I think that's unfortunate is where people are very open about talking about those things, but they're not really listening about those things.
No, they just want to hear their own voices.
Yeah. Have you ever heard a podcast called Beautiful Anonymous? Or Beautiful?
No.
I love this podcast. It's my favorite podcast. Whenever I talk podcasts, this is the one I a lot. But it's basically a comedian. His name is Chris Gethard. He tweets out a telephone number, and then anybody can call that telephone number, and they can talk about whatever they want. The only thing in the conversation is the person calling does not tell him their name or where they're from, and then they just have a conversation for 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the person who's made the phone call, you can hang up within that 60 minutes, but usually people talk full 60. And in one episode, now the host is a super liberal guy. He's very open about that. And in one episode, right before the election, this woman called in, and she was like, she was a Trump supporter. And they had this really nice, like, hour-long conversation about why she was supporting Trump. And she mainly supported Trump because they were part of a military family, and the whole Benghazi thing was like, a big no-no because obviously they were a military family. They just couldn't vote for Hillary because of that.
Mhm.
But, it was this nice, like, back and forth conversation about why one was voting for Trump and why the other one wouldn't vote for Trump, or why they were voting for Hillary. And so it was a nice conversation like that, as opposed to, there's sort of this, like, people want to just stay in their own echo chambers kind of thing. Like,
Yes.
I'm a liberal. I want to hang out with liberals. Liberals are right. I'm a conservative. Conservative values are all I care about. I don't want to talk to anybody who isn't conservative. And you get into these things where nobody quite understands the other person's point of view. And we see a lot. I'm even seeing a lot of that. Like, I'm seeing a lot of people who are younger. Like, tomorrow's the day. October 17th is the day that weed becomes legal in Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
The younger side of things is very open to the idea that, we're all open to the idea that it's coming out because, hey man, it's already everyone in a lot of people in Canada are already doing it. A lot of people in Canada are very open about doing it. At least now it's not illegal and people aren't getting like silly tickets and all that shit over it.
At least you're not going to jail.
Well, there you go. No, well, here's the thing, right? Up until a few years ago, it became like it was just basically a ticketable offense in Toronto. So if you got caught smoking weed or whatever, you basically get the equivalent of a parking ticket. If you had a shitload of weed with you, then you were going to jail, right?
Yes.
So, it was trending in a good way on this end of the border at least. But you're right, you're not going to jail for it. I mean, if you have a shitload now, you still will go to jail for it. But it's also just nice to know that people who are doing it can get it from a legal source. They'll get some clean weed as opposed to, you don't have like, I'm not a weed guy at all, but my friends would tell me about some of the etiquette that you have to do when you buy weed.
Oh,
like
yes. I have a buddy like that.
Yeah, so you buy the weed, you have to smoke one with the dealer. I'm like, what? Like this, that's a thing?
Oh, God.
So
yes.
That kind of shit just sort of blows my mind. So, now you can just go get it online, or you can get it from thing. And I understand, like, that's a big thing, at least for people of a certain age and younger. But I was having this conversation with my dad, and my dad wasn't too thrilled about it, which was a huge shocker to me because my dad usually has no opinions on any of these things, at least ones that he'll talk to me about.
Interesting.
And he was just like, I don't know, man. It's just like a whole thing now. If you have some on you, it's gonna make it so much harder to cross the border. Which, you're usually coming. Have you ever come into Canada?
No, it's one of my
No.
goals to visit one day.
There. So, like whenever I'm crossing the border, going into Buffalo, or for driving down to the States somewhere, there's always like, my car is fine. I have no parking tickets. I have nothing like that. But it's me and my wife who's Filipino. And I'm always just like, there's always like a twinge of like, just don't be that guy. Don't be that customs officer who just causes trouble for no reason. And for the most, like, they have always been amazing to me. So it's maybe an irrational fear, but you hear stories every once in a while, and there's always like a little bit of fear. And I think when you're, for some people who are just like, it's always like kind of a hassle for them to cross the border, and now it might be a little bit more of a hassle because people will be there's always going to be that 1 or 2% of people who are like, well, it's legal in Canada, why should they care about it in America? And you're like, well, because it's a different country, idiot.
But
So
yeah,
I can
I
see the sort of hesitation that I know somebody of an older generation would have um, with weed becoming legal in Canada, and I can see that with like so many other things, right? If you lived your whole life, you may not even have an opinion. We have a Joe has a relative who we're all fairly close with, who's very outspoken. He's a very outspoken conservative, and he, anytime whenever it's Pride, whenever the Pride Parade comes to Canada, comes to Toronto, he's always like, "Oh, they're forcing their stuff on us," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, why are you so frustrated by this? It has nothing, like absolutely nothing to do with you. But then at the same time, I guess he's a dude who's, for 60 years of his life or whatever, he was told one thing, and now the world is changing around him, right?
no, yeah,
It's a tough,
it's
yeah,
a tough time for some people to change their
yeah,
beliefs, and we have made some progress for the better, little by little, but sadly sometimes it just feels like for every 2 steps we take take 5 back, like, but
yeah.
it is it all in all, it's better times than it used to be. It just, for different people, for different generations, it can sometimes feel like walking on eggshells,
Yeah,
depending on who you're talking with and the type
yeah.
of person you are.
I'm uh, I'm kind of interested. I was listening to, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but they were saying how, when you're between the ages of 18 and 34, advertisers and companies and TV shows and all these things sort of are begging for you to buy their product, right? The
Yes.
world is sort of geared towards 18 to 34-year-olds. And they're like, once you pass that age, you have to start realizing that you're not the important generation anymore. So now you have to start figuring out, like, okay, I guess I have to get used to the fact that I'm not the important generation. And similarly for people who have like made it, because people work really hard to make it, be successful at something. When they become successful, now they have to maintain it, as opposed to they have to maintain it because now they're the people on top. They're the people they were trying to get at. They have become that people, and now like it's a whole new group of people trying to get what they have, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Basically, be the
So
king of the mountain and make sure you stay
yeah.
up there.
So that's the thing. So
Uh,
you're either the king of the mountain, or you're the people you're the people that everyone loves, and you have to adjust your expectations as to what the world wants of you.
yeah. Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
And
So
and
enjoy it
some.
while it lasts, Jesus.
I'm still there. I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle. I can
That's what
have.
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You enjoy it. The end of this year, I'm out of that group.
You just float. Just float along. I still gotta deal with surveys. Trust me. I get surveys every other day, asking me, "Do you know this company?" And then you get force fed all these ads. That's another reason I kind of love Facebook. It's ads.
Though
Uh,
Instagram's jumping on that bandwagon a little bit now.
yes, yes, it is, and I'm
Yeah.
lucky it's just pictures. I'm glad it's just pictures though. I don't have to read. So I can just scroll. So,
Yeah.
so we're getting at that time. Like I would love to continue talking with you, but
Yeah.
so let's kind of start closing up.
Yeah.
So on the show, we would like our guests to share a story because we are the Convoluted Podcast. We would like you to share one of the strangest, weirdest, most convoluted thing that has ever happened, you have ever done, or you have ever encountered in your life.
Interesting. The things that are overstrapped. All right. I've had a few. I'm kind of blanking on what one thing to talk about. Um, let's see. You know, hello?
Yes.
Is it connected? Okay. Sorry, you got quiet there for a minute. I
Oh no
wasn't
no
sure
yeah.
if I disconnected.
I was gonna let you. I was gonna let you just talk
Uh,
forever too.
um, I have to say, there was one day where I live, like I said, I live in Mississauga, and I I work in Toronto, so a lot of the times I'm like commuting back and forth. And there was one time, uh, I had gotten a brand new job, but my friends from my other job wanted to meet up for have some dinner and stuff. And so I went, had food, I had drinks with them, everything. And I mentioned this on the podcast a little bit. Me and Tash both have this. I have a horrible case of FOMO, which is a fear of missing out. So if a
Okay.
party, if there's a party and it is going, I love being part of that party till it ends, because I would hate to be the person who wakes up the next day and they go, "Dude, you won't believe what happened when you went to bed or when you left," right? So I'm always like the last person there, which for my wife is always frustrating, because she's at a certain point she's like, "Yo, man, I'm tired," you know. So I was out with these friends. We were there very late at night. We decided to go grab a McDonald's. We went to go grab McDonald's, and there was a girl, a guy, and we were in line. And as we were in line getting the food, it's one of these McDonald's in Toronto that's very like small, but it's open late. So there's no like benches or anything. There's just, you walk in, there's just lineups. And we were waiting in there, and there was a guy standing behind us, and he said hello to the girl that I was with the girl that was in our crew. And she sort of said hello, and she spoke to him, and she was looking very uncomfortable. And it turns out that she dated this guy for a little while, and then he and her broke up. They were dating for a very short amount of time. They broke up, and then he started dating a friend of hers, who she has since like not. She is this. They have since not been friends. So he says hello. She says they make some small talk. We're still waiting in line, and then all of a sudden he just starts berating her and saying really shitty things to her, and she starts like crying. And there was myself and another friend of mine with her, and he starts calling that guy a bunch of names because he thinks they're dating. And it was super weird and uncomfortable, because none of us were going to get into to a physical altercation, but we were sort of verbally fighting a little bit. This girl's crying, but we're also in line at a McDonald's to get our food, so we can't really leave and go somewhere. We've already ordered our food. So that happens. Everybody sort of disperses. The girl feels a little better. We're all having our food, and then everyone sort of jumps in their cabs and goes home. And I decide to walk. I'm like, I'm going to walk to the subway station and grab my subway. So I start walking over to the subway station. I get there, and I can't get into the entrance. And then all of a sudden I realize, I don't know if this happens in other cities, but for whatever reason in Toronto, the subway station closes for 2 hours late at night. So it runs till like 2 a.m. and then it starts back up at like 4 or 5. So I'm there now at the subway station, and I'm like, oh fuck, it's closed. And there's a guy there, and he's like, it'll open in a few hours. And I'm like, can I go inside the subway because it's closed? I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to sit there. And the guy's like, no, it's locked. I go to make a phone call to like call a cab because Uber wasn't a thing at the time. And my phone's dead. I'm pretty sure I got this cold back then too. Um, so I'm basically roaming around Toronto for a good 2 hours till the train station starts. I had no cash on me, which was another reason. So I basically had my credit. I had my credit card and my debit card, and there wasn't a bank really nearby. But I had my credit card and my debit card, which cabs didn't take at the time. So I'm basically walking around Toronto, jumping into a few Tim Hortons, because this is a Canadian story, to get some heat. And then, I mean, like, I go chill at one of the Tim Hortons, and then suddenly the Tim Hortons is filled with homeless people who are fine, but some people are not fine, so they were a little crazy. And then, sorry about that. And then, basically walking back and forth trying to figure out what's going on, just waiting for this damn train to start. And then, when the train finally came back on, it took me back to my car. And then when I finally got home, it was 6 a.m., which, again, from where the party ended to my house should have been at least a half hour. And I think the party ended somewhere around 2 a.m. So that was kind of an odd night. I'm pretty sure I have a more crazy story. I probably have a crazy story that involves Tash, but I can't quite remember it right now, unfortunately. So,
tale for another day. But
yes.
Sam, thank you for sharing. That is quite a tale of just a little bit of an after party lunch, a dispute, and then roaming, and it seems like some homeless people.
Yeah.
That is a tale in itself. Wow. But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries.
Wow. I can only imagine being stuck in the city like that.
Well, the nice thing is that, Toronto for the most part is a fairly safe city. So it wasn't terrible. It was just these I was like, I could walk around further away, but then if you walk too far, you're too far from the train station. If you walk too close, it's just like. So I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna go, and then I finally make it to the Tim Hortons, and then there's a guy screaming like a maniac, and I'm like, all right, maybe this is not right.
There are sections you steer away from. I understand.
Yeah.
That's how I am when I'm traveling in Portland at night, or when I do get my chance to venture that city, which is not often.
Oh, you know what? I just thought of another story real quick. It's a quicker story.
Go for it.
I went out to a club I went out to a bar that's sort of, it's not officially, but is sort of known as a University of Toronto bar. And so we were out that day and we were having a good time, and we're heading back to the car. And we're walking by fairly big, there's a big franchise here in Toronto called Pizza Pizza, or in Canada called Pizza Pizza. And so we're walking past the Pizza Pizza, and this guy's there, and he's like, hey, buddy, do you want some pizza? And me and my friend look at him, and he's holding a slice of pizza in his hand, and he moves it to his friend, and his friend is standing next to him. Both these guys are like college age, they're like 20-something. And his buddy's there, and his buddy lifts his shirt, and his buddy is wearing no pants. So all it is dick. And we're like, we look at him, and we have the most unreal reaction, is that we look at him, we look at each other, and then we start screaming and run away.
Oh my god! Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't get that image out of my head.
There you go.
Oh wow, that was a quickie. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I hope everyone listening enjoyed that one, because I can't get that one out of my mind. Oh.
Unfortunately, neither can I.
Okay, you know what? Then I'm going to put you in some very awkward situation now, because it's time for our game show portion.
Okay.
Intro music here. Okay, so the game you chose is Would You Rather. Here, I'm going to you're going to go in 2 rounds, and each round you're going to be put into 2 situations, and I would like you to explain why you would choose one over the other. Are you ready?
All right, let's try this.
All right, round 1. So, would you rather live in a McDonald's playhouse with Ronald McDonald as your roommate, or get fired out of a cannon into orbit?
Uh,
Let me know if you have any questions of either one of these.
um, I think I'd like to live in the playhouse. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think you know what you're gonna. I feel like you know what you're gonna get out of it. Ronald McDonald. I'm not one who's creeped out by clowns, so I think that might be okay. But Playhouse is always connected to. Sorry about that. A Playhouse is always connected to a McDonald's, so if you need some food, that's at least always there. Is this a Playhouse that has been used? Are kids in there a lot, or okay?
Yes, you found this ad, and it's a 1-year lease that Ronald McDonald. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think as long as you don't go into the ball pit a lot, because I feel like that's where there's a lot of urine.
Somehow your room's like upstairs on the pin, all the play set somehow all the way on top.
Okay. I think it might work out. I think it might be a fun time. You can definitely have guests over a lot. It'd probably be awesome during Halloween time. You can decorate it up a little bit. It might not be great for if you want to sleep in on the mornings. I feel like that might be a little bit loud.
Yeah. And may I ask why you would choose that one over getting fired out of a cannon into orbit?
Well, I don't know where I'm gonna land in orbit, right? Like if I end up with a bunch of Klingons, it's gonna be a fucking terrible time. So it's just I'm going for the devil that you know versus the devil that you don't.
There you go. All right then.
There you go.
All right, you just got a 1-year lease with Ronald McDonald. All right, let's go into round 2.
Okay.
All right. This is going to be interesting. I want you to really think about this.
Okay.
And if you have any extra questions for me to elaborate. All right. Would you rather be hunted like an antelope by a bunch of wealthy colonial Englishmen?
Okay.
Or ride an anteater while you and the anteater are high on meth?
Interesting. I'm gonna Google really quickly what an anteater looks like, even though I know, but still. Oh yeah, the second one, for sure. I don't know. Well, here's the thing. From the little that I know about meth, other than the fact that it completely ruins your face and teeth and everything else, it seems like people who enjoy it have the time of their lives on it. We can agree on that. So,
yes.
Hoping that this is a one-time thing and that me and the anteater are high on meth, we're probably, and hopefully, I'm hoping it's a good high. We're probably gonna have an adventure time like experience. You know, just traveling whatever mountainous regions we're at and meeting an old Alzheimer man, and Alzheimer man, and trying to save a princess and whatnot. We'll probably be just doing circles in real life, but over there it'll probably be amazing. And as opposed to getting chased by, like, I don't know what was the second one? You're being chased by Englishmen, but what are you?
You're being hunted. You're just being hunted like an animal.
I'm just being hunted like an animal. So I know my stamina. That game's not going to be too long. They'll catch me fairly quickly. So at least on the other side, I'm probably the what's the word I'm looking for? Not disconnect, but the whatever it is that when you get off your high, it will probably be terrible. But whatever time that I'm in that high is probably going to be amazing.
So that is your choice?
Yeah, I can't see having a good time at all in the other situation.
All right, then. You and the Anteater have the adventure of your life after a party that you left, and this is how you ended up in. So
Nice.
there you go.
Nice. All right. I may do a drawing for this and send it over to you. You can post it if you want.
Okay. Just do that, and I'll use it as the thumbnail. Oh no, but thank you for playing. Like I said, it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys, and I'm glad to be able to talk with you one-on-one.
Oh, right back at you, man. Again, like I said, we will have you on the podcast whenever we can figure out the technology. I know Joe's been working on it, but it's Joe, so we'll probably find out like in 2 years.
I'm hoping to get Joey on one day as well.
Yeah.
And I know we had a little bit of miscommunication recently, so.
Yeah, that's Joey. Don't worry.
But for now, go ahead and promote anything you like, and go for it.
Sure. So we're the No Inner Monologue Podcast. We're available on SoundCloud, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Pod Addict. Just search for the No Inner Monologue Podcast. If you want to follow us on Instagram or Twitter, we're at No Inner Pod, and on Facebook at No Inner Monologue as well. And I'm just going to throw out a personal plug as well. I have a drawing page at Dwen Draws Stuff. It's DWENIE Draws Stuff. It's all one word. And if you want to follow me over there for some drawings or some art or whatever, that's cool too. So yeah, those are the things. And our podcast drops every Tuesday. It's usually up Tuesday at midnight on SoundCloud, and then on the other ones around 3 a.m. Eastern time. So we're fairly regular with that stuff. We have an episode every week. And if you just want to hear four idiots talk about a conversation and learn a little bit, while it's kind of like a morning show vibe, we like to say, with the not safe for work feel. So give us a shout and listen and let us know.
And I second that. And I want to thank everyone for listening to this show, and I want to thank our guests. As always, you can find us on Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can always find me on basically Google Tyrant Dominus, everywhere, anywhere. And if you like, just go to tyrantdominus.com. Simple, easy place to go. So I want to, once again, Dwen, thank you for joining me. And bye, everyone.
See ya.
If you could do them a favor and maybe tell a friend about the Convoluted Podcast, they sure would appreciate it. My creator knows I don't. They don't market or advertise the show in any way. They rely entirely on word of mouth.